Do you find subject access requests and GP reports really challenging and costing you time and money? Well, in this episode, I'm going to show you a resource that may help you save time, workload, and money, and basically help your practice run a lot more effectively. Let's tech enhance your primary care and learning. If this is the first time we're meeting, I'm Dr. Gandalf of eGPlearner, where I look at supporting you with technology-enhanced primary care and learning. And in this episode, I talk to a company called Medi2Data that produces a product called eMR that claims to help save you workload, time, and money by streamlining the whole process of subject access requests, GP reports, and patient online access. I think it really works. I'll be clear, I've not been paid or remunerated to do this video. I just think it's a system that works really, really well. And I wanted to show you what it's like. And I've got the company to come and talk to us about it. Anyway, any questions and comments, feel free to contact me. As usual, available on all the various different platforms. Make sure you subscribe, ring the bell, get notified of all of our content. And if you've got any questions, leave me a comment. I guarantee you reply. Anyway, shall we begin? So EGP learners, in this session I'm joined by Richard and Nick from Medi2Data Exchange, and they're going to talk us through their product called eMR, which I've had a look at with them and I find it really effective and useful, and I wanted to share it with you. So let's go through it. I'm just going to hand over to Richard and Nick, who are going to talk us through the program itself. Are you out there, guys?
Yes, very good morning to you, Dr. Gandhi.
Cool. So you wanted to show us what eMR is and how it works and how potentially this can save practice time, money, and definitely workload. So take it away.
Thank you very much. So we're going to give you a brief presentation of eMR. This is a web-based application which is currently interfaced into the EMIS clinical system. And it's a very simple setup that takes no more than about 10 minutes to do. And eMR is offering you a variety of different functions. Firstly, it will allow you within a very short period of time, no more than 10-15 minutes, to complete a full redacted copy of a SAR, complete medical patient medical record. It will also allow you to prepare a record under patient online access, and it will also provide a redacted medical report suitable to send back to an insurance company to complete the DWP forms, etc. So you're fee-paying for the surgery, fee-paying reports. It's all consolidated into one view, as you can see on the screen here, with the different products at the top. We're just going to take you very quickly into the sort of management of the system. So under surgery management on the left-hand side here, this allows the person who is responsible on behalf of the surgery to set up all of their admin staff and their GPs, and also grant permissions below as to which role can perform which tasks. That is very much at a surgery level. There are default permissions that are applied and be useful for the individual who's responsible for this to go ahead and just check those permissions against the roles. We also do have a feature which allows for multi-site access. Now, this is where a cluster of surgeries, primary care networks or GP federations decide to share workloads between surgeries. And this is an opportunity for the surgery to invite members of other surgeries into their pipeline so that they can perform subject to access requests, insurance reports, and patient online access on behalf of that surgery and complete those tasks.
So definitely useful for, I guess, practices that are looking at outsourcing some of their admin stuff, I guess, to either locums or, like you said, in federation-based organisations, or currently with our current coronavirus stuff, having remote workers kick in and help out and stuff.
We are working currently with surgeries around this very difficult and testing time with COVID-19. It would appear that surgeries are suffering quite substantially with regard to staff capacity. And what we're offering as a service to surgeries is the ability to invite Medi2Data as a virtual GP surgery, so that it will allow our GP locums who are working virtually to come in and process SARs and insurance reports on behalf of the surgery. And we're getting quite a lot of interest at this moment in time in that service. So if there is anyone that would be interested in learning more, then if they drop us an email at emr@medi2data.com or visit our website and go through complete an interest form there, we'd be happy to get back to them and help them out.
Cool. So going back to the demo, we've got, like you said, the surgery view. What happens next?
So we're going to first start with a subject to access request, which is clearly taking an extraordinary amount of time for a surgery to be able to process on an individual basis. So the first thing that needs to be done is that there's a confidentiality policy that is applied on a per surgery basis. And this is just drawing attention to the individual that they are actually authorized to be able to undertake the tasks. What we're doing now is we're putting in a dummy patient that exists within the eMIS testing environment. And this is effectively taking from the letter of instruction, which 60% of these instructions for subject access requests come from solicitors. But from the letter of instruction, we're putting in, the surgery is putting in the patient details. Obviously, the surgery is checking that the subject to access request consent form has been signed. Mm-hmm. The important factor is to determine from the letter of instruction what the scope of the request is. In other words, do they want a copy of the full record, or do they actually want information relating to a particular timeline? And we can input a date range to restrict the volume of information being sent out. And that can be done here as shown. Now, what we need to do is check, and for the surgery to check that in fact the patient information matches that's in the clinical system. And we are now showing you in real time. Actually, we tested now quickly the link into eMIS to check that patient does exist. If for some reason there was some difficulties, then there is a reject option, but we're going to quickly move on and select that patient. And what this is now doing is very importantly giving a really good option for the surgery around the GDPR compliance aspect. So this is about, as a data controller, who would I like to have authorization to see this information? And right here, we're going to put in the patient's information, because the surgery, when they complete this task, it will automatically notify the patient via a text to their mobile and an email link to provide access to a secure portal through which the patient, operating two-factor authentication, which is a code that's sent to their mobile, can actually access and view their medical record.
And just for clarity, for those that may not be aware of two-factor authentication it's just like when you access things like your bank accounts and stuff, as Richard said, it's that text message kind of confirmation that you are who you say you are to your mobile and stuff. So just for clarity on that aspect.
Okay,
I guess one question, Richard. Sometimes patients don't have mobile numbers. How would this system work in that situation?
What we would then advise the surgery to ask the patient is whether they have a family member or a friend who would be willing to provide their mobile number so that access can be given. If we can't operate this function, then of course the third option down the bottom of the screen would be a last resort, but actually to print out the entire completed document with attachments and provide it to the patient directly.
So I guess methods for practice to look at is then just making sure that's documented in the notes, that the person is happy to share that number and use that number. It can be quite useful as well in future patient contact as well, but definitely something that just needs to be, I guess, a box ticked by practices to make sure it works effectively.
Yeah, now that this could be a default position where the surgery is comfortable in the patient for every SARs that they process, giving an option to the patient to have access. But what the surgery can also do in option 2 here is, instead of the current process, which is unfortunately to print off, redact, scan, and then encrypt it, and then burn onto a CD and send back to a solicitor or a third party, or indeed even worse, which is to take the hard copies, redact them, and then to take them to the post office to post them out. They indeed take the information off the letter of instruction, put it into this section here, together with a phone number, and then the third party, the solicitor, can actually then receive in the same way the patient a notification, and they can be granted authorized access to view the medical document themselves. That is an option anyway, even if the patient can't provide a mobile number. At least their solicitor will be able to receive that information.
Agreed. However, quite rightly, I'd agree with you that normally the best route for this is to give it to the patient because it's the patient's data. They've got responsibility. It's less sticky, should we say, if we do that way.
It is, and also, as we'll show in a minute, the patient, it can authorize the third party for 30 days to have access to their information. So that makes the surgery even more comfortable in knowing that that option is available to the patient to give authorization.
Cool.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
We ask that they upload a subject to access consent, which is picked out from scanning that consent into their system and then selecting it from their workflow folder, and then that's uploaded, and we're ready now to proceed. Now, this is an extremely important screen that's popped up here because based on our interaction, and this has been co-produced with GPs and practice managers in understanding behavioral elements of their workflows in the surgery. Now, what you'll see here is there are a couple of options, and it's defaulted to a radio button, which says, on the basis of, in most SARs processing, there's an awful lot of data that has to be handled here. What we don't want to do is to take up time and also potential bandwidth of the clinical system by waiting maybe 10 minutes or whatever the time might take, depending on the volume of data. For this to be processed and apply the auto redactions. So this option for a SAR says, we allow this to continue and we'll notify you once the auto redactions and the preparation of the information has been made so that you can come in and review. So we're going to go ahead and hit continue to allow that to happen. It also will apply the auto redactions to the attachments as well. Mm-hmm. And so it's a good way of allowing an administrator to prepare the report very quickly. It takes a couple of minutes. It's gone back into the pipeline. And as you can see here, it's now redacting. And it will allow then that administrator or GP to carry on with other tasks without having to sit in front of the monitor. So what we're going to do now is the third one down is a SAR instruction, and it's in progress. Mm-hmm. We'll go into that and quickly show you now what would happen once that email or notification has come through to say, now you can go back in and start to review the information. So we're going into what's called a provisional report, and that is a working document allowing administrators and staff and GPs to now look at this data to find out what should be included and what should be redacted. It's very important that they understand that from an auto redaction perspective, both sensitive information and third-party information is automatically redacted. Mm-hmm. That they can go and check that on the TRUD lists that are provided through the NHS. Now, the other very important first thing is that this view of the working document of the SAR is uniform. So for every instruction, whether it's a SAR, whether it's an insurance report, it will be structured in the same way with these different sections: patient profile in the top left, and then significant conditions working down. And as we scroll down, you'll see a lot of green ticks, but now you'll see this history of domestic use, which has been highlighted by the auto redaction tool, and is currently advising that this will be redacted out of the final report. Now, if whoever is reviewing this information wishes to change the current status, in other words, a green tick, you can click on it and it will actually convert to gray. And that gray tick means that it will be redacted from the information. Similarly, there may be redactions already made by the auto redaction. It's somewhat unlikely, but it's certainly possible that actually the surgery decide they'd like to include it. So mm-hmm. They go back to that gray with the line through that particular piece of information. And now it's a green tick, and that will be included. You've got your medications on the left-hand side, both acute and repeat. We've also got in each section, we have the ability to add some text if it's appropriate. So any free text can be applied to each section. And as we scroll down, we now have allergies. The system will present in this format the 3 most recent pathology tests, but as you'll see in a moment, we also are gathering all of the attachments, and any pathology tests will be included that are older than the third will be included as an attachment. We did an evaluation study with Swansea University and a group of surgeries, and one of the key elements of that came out was feedback around the clinical coding and the level of extraction around a consultation. So what we've been able to do is give the option for the entire consultation to be redacted, or elements of the consultation to be redacted, or using our toolbox, the ability to take out singular phrases or words, which is just being demonstrated as I'm speaking. This is a really neat tool because what it's doing is building on the left-hand side, which is slightly shaded. You can build your surgery library with acronyms and words and phrases that then are stored so that they will be automatically either redacted or replaced as required. So we have asthma, it's been highlighted because we've added it to the library, and now you've got some choices of either redacting or replacing. So that's a quick tool that makes life very, very simple for any manual redactions that need to be applied.
So if I could come in, a potential
Yep.
really effective use for that is if you have a record of a patient that's well known to your practice, and say, for example, that patient has a known relative whose name may pop up in the records, you could easily just search for that name throughout the whole record and automatically redact it quickly and effectively just by doing this process. Yeah? Absolutely.
Third parties are actually part of the auto redaction routine, but that's a very, very good way of ensuring that that information will not appear in the output report. We do want to come down now to a very, very important function that we believe to help the surgeries, particularly time saving. So what eMR will do is it will pull all of the attachments from the document management system. That is not just an EMIS document management system, but it's also DocMan as well. And what it will do is it will apply levels of auto redaction to those attachments, and those little orange circles on screen is advising the surgery of the number of redactions that have been made from an auto perspective. So if we go into a letter from a specialist, for instance, and this is dummy data, so apologies for, there we go. On the left-hand side, we have the letter itself, and it is showing the auto redactions that have been made by the system. Now, on the right-hand side, we have the core text of that letter. And what we can do is we can allow the surgery to say, well, actually, there's information in there I would like to redact. So you highlight it with your cursor and hit the redact button. But equally, there's information in there that has been advised that is to be redacted, but actually the surgery would like to include that information. Again, you highlight it with your cursor, and then you hit include. And then you include that one as well. And then if we go down, and then look at an update of the preview, those tasks that have just been undertaken will then be reflected in the document on the left-hand side, which has actually included information that was going to be redacted and has redacted information that was going to be included. And that then allows you to have a manual redaction to those attachments in a very user-friendly, simple way. Mm-hmm. So we're now saving those changes and going back now into the provisional worksheet report. And obviously, each redaction can be done that way. As confidence is built in using the system, we hope then that the surgery is more reliant then on the accuracy of the auto redactions in most circumstances. But obviously, it's important that they're able to check that. So we now come back in and we're going to scroll down to the bottom where we've got uncoded data, which is talking about here. This is going into the care history to ensure that any coded information that may relate to what's being requested by a third party, or in this instance, it's all of the information, again, is being brought up and allowing the surgery to redact or keep in. So as we go to the bottom now, having reviewed the document, that we're going to give the surgery the first opportunity to actually view what the output document is going to look like. It's not finalized, so it will still allow the surgery, if they see anything in the output document, to go back in and re-edit, but it's giving them a view now, together with all of the attachments. So what we're waiting for is all of the auto redactions to be applied to the information, as well as any manual redactions that have been added by the surgery. And this is now being presented with all of the attachments on the left-hand side. Now, there may be some file versions which will not go through the redaction process. And the surgery has the opportunity to either view that and allow it to go through, in which case it will go in a zip file, or to redact that attachment because they don't want it to go through, obviously, in which case it won't. But you have the list of your attachments on your left, and then you have a copy of the report, which you can increase the size of viewing. That's it, and then review that output report. And when happy, scroll down to the bottom of the screen and just accept the fact that this has been prepared by the surgery, and go ahead and submit. Now, what's happening here is all of those redactions are being applied, everything is being prepared, and it is currently in a status of finalizing. And when this is refreshed and goes to a status of completed, as is just being shown here, so you can see how quickly all of that information has been put now into the finalized report and completed. What is also happening is the patient is receiving a text. And I've just received to my phone that text message, and it says to the patient, your GP surgery has completed your SAR request. We've sent you an email to access a copy. This may have landed in your junk mail. Move to your inbox to activate the link. So we're now going to go to our email. They would then see the email, which is the notification from your GP surgery. In the body of the text, there's a link which takes them to a secure portal. At this point, what they're going to be doing is asking to get a text, a code sent to them to their mobile, which I'm just about to receive, which I have, which is 842506. Okay, and then they can access the report. There are terms and conditions, understanding that now the patient is responsible for the data and certainly is responsible on the basis of who they authorized to view the data. They then have the option to view the report, which will just open, so you can see what sort of view. Together with the subject to access request consent form, they have a very big copy. But what is really a very valuable function is this third-party authorization piece, where the patient can come in, put in the details of the third party together with their email, and they would then also receive a email with a link and allow a code to be sent to either a landline or a mobile number to allow that third party to gain a 30-day access to the information. If for some reason the third party wishes to have an extended view of the information, then after 30 days, the patient would have to reauthorize that third party, but that can be done as well. So this has definitely helped surgeries in the whole concept of understanding, as a data controller, their responsibilities under GDPR, and most of our customers are using that function as almost a default to allow the patient to have access and make some decisions.
And I guess one of the key benefits I see with this then is it just basically, it trims down the time that you're having to spend effectively doing the SARs, which is obviously a key thing because practices aren't paid for doing SARs and they are a massive time sink. I guess, and one of the things is what I like about what I've seen is effectively the way it streamlines the whole process, makes it that you can definitely work in the background as well. So it does a lot of the auto redactions, but still gives you the control to check for more detail if that's something that you're concerned about. Clearly allows you to delegate that to other staff members so that it can be supported with protocols and that kind of stuff to make it work. And also the notification thing, it just tells the patient when it's ready. So you don't even have to use your own admin staff to contact the patient to say, actually, your report's now ready, come and collect it, all that kind of stuff. And from what I remember, this is all encrypted, it's all data secure and that kind of stuff. So in terms of delivery of the records to the patients and stuff, no issues with postage, as you said, but other mechanisms as well. This is, packaged and secure and as best as it can be.
Yes, and Dr. Gandhi, if I may add to that, the most important concept to understand is there's no movement of data. Mm-hmm. So data is static. This is all about the surgery and the patient granting authorized access to view the data. So it is always going to be contained within a very secure environment in a data center in the UK with a lot of firewalling and a lot of robust procedures around security, hence the two-factor authentication. And also just to let your colleagues know that by having such robust access into the information, this allows, through eMR, remote working from home. So GPs can actually be reviewing reports that have been prepared by their staff at the surgery, and through two-factor authentication, they can come in and actually work on SARs and insurance reports from home, which is something that in this day and age, obviously with the difficulties that we're experiencing with COVID-19, even under normal circumstances, is a great advantage to the GPs.
Definitely. So we've seen the SARS aspect of things. I guess the other part that often comes through is things like insurance reports and that kind of stuff. How does that work?
Yes, and before we actually get there, I just want to address a question that we get regularly. It's been my pledge to the NHS and specifically to primary care that eMR is completely free for a surgery to use. That's not just the use of the technology, that's also support and training. However, the only way in which we can continue to do that, continue to allow eMR to be free, is if the surgery uses eMR not just for SARs, but also for insurance reports. Because our business model is predicated upon a charge that the surgery will be applying to completing an insurance report, going to, as an example, an insurer, and we would not affect that charge at all, but we would apply a transaction fee over and above the GP fee, which has been accepted and will be paid for by the instructing agent. So it's very important that surgeries understand that they're getting enormous benefits from SARs. 82% efficiency, 66% in time savings, 100% in direct costs. So there are huge benefits in using eMR, but at the same time, we need them to be able to use it for an insurance report so that we can get some revenue from the insurer who is requesting that information. Now, in order to very quickly show you that, we already have an instruction in our pipeline that has come from an insurance company, and obviously it has the status as new. And we're just going to show you very quickly that as very similar process to SARs, but much faster. So already this is the confidentiality policy again, just checking that the individual is authorized to undertake this task. It's pre-populated because the information is being put in by the client who's instructing the surgery for this particular report. That instruction has been coded using the SNOMED CT codes and read codes. So you can see here the list of potential conditions that particular third party is interested in, and whether those conditions exist within the patient record or attachments, then eMR will pull that information through. So it is only pulling information out of the record that is relevant to the instruction. The other thing I just want to point out is there is no distinction made by the technology between a targeted request, which might be for a singular condition like diabetes, or a full templated report request, such as the insurer's industry standard GPR report. The system will take all of those conditions and produce a report in minutes. The consent form is there for the surgery to view that's been uploaded by the instructing agent, by the insurer. And then there may be some questions over and above the request of conditions that in the GPR report exist, and we've replicated that in this particular templated instruction. Next task is quickly to confirm that the patient is indeed registered. If the patient is not registered in the practice, then by clicking on reject request, there are a number of options which will be relayed immediately back to the instructing agent to say why actually the surgery cannot complete that instruction. We have a match, so we can move forward. Now, I explained earlier about the ability to be notified once a task has been completed for SAR, but because we're dealing with less information, the default here is to move on quickly to process the redacted report. So as I'm speaking, all of the auto redactions are being applied to the central repository of data that's being held for the patient. All of the relevant attachments are being pulled across with the auto redactions applied exactly as a SAR, as we showed you for the SAR. And so in about a few seconds now coming up, we will then get into the provisional report, which is the working document for the surgery to start to review and add any manual redactions. So this will just take a minute or so. The other thing I'd like to raise at this point is the fees. So there's been a lot of discussion, and actually what many of our customers are appreciating is, due to the enormous time savings and efficiencies that they're gaining through SARs, and the fee structure that has been recommended, we can go back to on the screen when we get to it, once this task is finished rather, is the fact that we want everyone to benefit from this whole process. That means the surgery benefiting, the patient benefiting, and indeed those insurance companies and other third parties who are instructing. And so the fee structure is based on turnarounds and how quickly reports can be sent back. And we'll refer to that fee management element of the system as soon as we've completed this task. Again, it's now showing the sensitive conditions and third parties being auto-redacted. We're not going to dwell on this very long, but it's exactly the same process as we showed you for the SAR. It's showing all of the relevant information. And as we are speaking, you will see potentially another circle on the right-hand side coming up for the 21st of March that will show the potential auto-redactions that have been made. And that's a process that's ongoing. And then you can go into the redaction, into the attachment and redact. There it is, it's just popped up. 21st of March has 10 redactions that have been auto-applied. Once all of that has been done, as we showed earlier, you can then complete the questions, and then we go ahead and provide a review of the report in the PDF output version, which is just being put together right now. And once that review has been done, you hit the submit button, and that is then stored in the system. A notification is sent to the third party, and the third party would then come into their pipeline, and they could then have access in the same way that we showed the patient having access to the information. That presentation of it will be then available for the instructing agent. So it's literally in seconds from completion that the insurance company, DWP, DVLA, whoever, would actually be notified and have sight of that report. I hope that whilst this is just going through its final stages, I hope that what surgeries can gain from this presentation is the compliance element that all surgeries are very nervous about, in what data should be presented and sent out to third parties, and that this tool gives a very simple and speedy way of being able to construct reports and SARs in a GDPR compliant manner with respect to what information should be included, and allow the redactions to take place in a very user-friendly way. As far as efficiencies to surgeries at a high level, I've quoted some percentages on time savings and direct costs, but also in time, we've estimated that surgeries receive around 350 reports a year. Currently, with one FTE, that's taking about 4 months to complete under the current processes undertaken by surgeries. Using eMR, we've been able to establish in our case studies that this has been reduced to 4 weeks. The actual net savings to surgeries is estimated to be approximately £10,000 a year in real terms. So that's quite significant. And from a primary care cost regarding the processing of SARs, we can see that if eMR was fully deployed, what is a current estimated cost of £84 million to the primary care sector as a result of not being able to charge for SARs, eMR would save about 68 million. We're just coming to the end of this report, and that then will be processed and sent back to the insurer, and it's in the finalizing stage, and it will be completed in a very short period of time. I'd like to take you quickly to the fee management section, as I alluded to earlier. This section is about the fees. So what we need is that we will bill on your behalf. You don't have to generate any fee notes. We generate all of your fee notes on a per instruction basis. At the end of the month, we then consolidate your fee notes into a single fee note on a per client basis. That means on a per insurer basis. And we ask for payment terms to be made next 7 days so that we can pay you electronically into your account no later than 2 weeks after the preceding month's completed report activity. Now, the fee structure that has been accepted by existing customers through a lot of engagement and discussions is that you get £80. Now, that £80, it doesn't matter if it's a targeted request or a full template, you're still going to get £80. So you won't have any more fees using eMR around £20 for any of the instructions. However, what we're asking for is that there is some play with how you're able to process the timescales that you can process these instructions. So you get £80 if you process within 7 days. But if, unfortunately, you've got a lot of workload going on, then if you take longer than 21 days, then you'd be getting £52 for the report. And you can see the fees in between. And this is just so that everyone understands and can work with the fact that you're getting so much efficiency. An AMRA or an insurance report using eMR is an under 10 minutes task. So what is currently being undertaken is approximately 30 to 45 minutes at, let's say, 80 to £100. You'll be able to process 6 reports in an hour at £80. Therefore, your hourly rate would be £480. Mm-hmm. So there are significant increases in revenue opportunity here and time savings.
And I think this is one point I'd like to pick up on, because I know, having spoken to practices before, when it comes to changes in way that they get income versus workload, I know many practices always think of the financial aspect of things. They look at the bottom line and they make their decisions based on just purely the money that they get. And what I always like to try and recommend practices also consider is the workload and time-saving opportunities that you can have from these kind of things. So yes, I know some practices may look at this and think, well, we can make more money if we do it ourselves and we don't use the system. I guess from my perspective, the key thing that you mentioned, Richard, is the amount of time saving that this can offer you. And therefore, whilst for some practices, it may mean they make less overall gross income, actually, when you equate that to the time saving and the workload efficiencies that it gets, that's freeing up your staff to do other things. Actually, I would argue a balance, if not be more effective in terms of the capacity that your organization can make, and therefore makes you more efficient, and actually will mean that your baseline overall income actually probably improves significantly. So I guess that's one thing I did want to pick up on, because I know when I've had similar things with other practices and stuff, that's one thing they focus on. I think it's always important looking at the business case itself and seeing that actually it may, for some practices, mean less income total, but actually when you equate it to the staffing costs and everything else that comes into play, you're probably still going to be plus, and it's an easier life for everybody, which is what is always good.
And if I may add, it is also offsetting the £30-40 cost that's being incurred to process a SAR, for which no remuneration.
Agreed.
And so that needs to be factored in, because this is a holistic view of all SARs and insurance report activity. Yeah. And therefore, that even has a more compelling element to it as well.
Agreed. So, I mean, we've seen effectively what this looks like from a SARS perspective, and we've seen what it looks like from an insurance form perspective. I know that access to patient records as well would work fairly similar to the SARS process. It's basically the same thing. It's just providing it to a different outcome, which is then into things like patient online access or whatever mechanism the patient would use to access the notes. So was there any other features that you felt we needed to see? Because I did have a couple of questions, if that's all right.
No, please, fire away.
Awesome. So I guess one of the questions I sometimes get asked is, how does this look from the other side, from the insurance companies? And so practices can understand how those requests come in, because obviously currently most practices will be having a paper request that comes in, and obviously this system allows that to be done electronically, if I'm correct. So do you mind just briefly showing us how that kind of works?
Yes, you raise a very, very good point here, because obviously at this moment in time, the GP surgeries are receiving paper-based instructions from insurers. And the fact is that eMR will allow the surgery to take that paper-based instruction and create an insurance report, redacted report, by actually inputting the information from the paper-based instruction into the fields that you see. So the instruction will say, it will give the patient information, and you'll also get client information like the insurer's details. So I just want to make it clear that paper-based instructions received into the surgery can be processed using eMR to get the desired results that we showed earlier. Now, the other option is that instructions come through directly into the pipeline electronically from the insurance companies. And the screen that you have here is a view of an insurance company pipeline where they can see all the different cases and they can also view the different statuses. And believe it or not, they also in real time can see when a report is in redaction, going through the redaction process and also going through the finalizing process. So actually in real time, they get updated as well. Now, the way an insurance company can instruct an insurer is by creating an instruction, which we're doing right now. So they put in their reference number, and then they will complete the applicant's details or claimant's details for the instruction, as is being shown here. Now, the insurance companies go through quite a lot of procurement and testing. So insurers that are using the system have been obviously impressed and have signed off the data security elements of the way in which they will interact with the surgery using this particular mode, which is sending the instruction through the eMR pipe portal. So they would then put in the GP that the patient has advised them to notify and instruct, and then we come down to the scope. Now, dependent upon who the client is, we have the ability to give them 3 products to instruct under. If they're an insurer, they can instruct under an underwriting instruction or a claims instruction. If they're an outsourcer or a solicitor, it may be that they're looking to process a SAR, they can instruct using the SAR instruction. For this purpose, we're going to select an underwriting insurance report. And what the client has done is that they've grouped their instructions via templates. And that template will, if we go to GPR, that's effectively taking the GPR report and has grouped that GPR template into high-level conditions and then associated conditions using the SNOMED codes. So they literally only have to do that job once and save it as a template, and then they can just select that template from their drop-down to make the instructing process very, very simple. The next thing they need to do is just upload the consent form, and they go into their workflow and select the correct consent form. And then if they wish, they can apply questions, and these are the templated questions that have been associated with the GPR, and then they submit that instruction into surgery. It's on their pipeline now as a new instruction, and as we have a demo, we can now go into the surgery, go back to the pipeline, and you'll see that that has in fact been now submitted and has gone straight through to the surgery for them to process.
Awesome. And I guess one of the things I really liked about what you mentioned is this live update that the insurance companies have in terms of where their reports are progressing. So for our admin team that are having to deal with a lot of this, they get less of those communication calls saying, where's our report? Or we don't know where it is, or where are, it just improves communication between practice and provider. And that, again, makes people's lives easy. I really like that. Things that do that are good.
Dr. Gandhi, I think that's an extraordinarily important point, because what insurance companies don't appreciate is the working environment that GPs and admin staff and practice managers are actually working in the surgery. And the last thing that they want to get is a phone call through chasing a report. Mm-hmm. So hopefully this whole ecosystem that is involving the insurer or instructing agents and the surgeries is a far more efficient way in which they can both operate in and have clarity around how the process is working and benefit from the efficiencies at the same time.
Okay. So I guess people may be thinking, okay, so we've seen the system and obviously I'm talking about it. I'll be quite clear. I don't currently use the system. And the reason for that is because, as Richard mentioned, so this is live on EMIS at present, but it's not live on other systems. Now, I know that this is something you're working towards. As many of my eGPlearners will know, I'm a System 1 user. Can you tell us when that's likely to happen, Richard?
Yes, we are currently undergoing an integration project with Vision, which we anticipate completing in April with a full rollout. And then following that, we hope to be rolling out to TPP users, System 1 users, in June of this year.
Awesome. So I'll be anxiously waiting for an announcement in June to say that our whole SARs processing stuff will be so much easier, along with obviously the streamlining of our insurance reports and everything else that comes with it. I know one of the things that you mentioned earlier as well is the fact that this system is free for practices. Obviously, there is that thing about insurance reports and how you make the money, and that is a bipartisan thing. You have to have one without the other. But I guess, is there plans for additional kind of things that practices can pay for, or kind of premium services, or is there other kind of costs potentially attached just for clarity?
For absolute clarity, anything to do with eMR with respect to the functionality of the technology, there will be no charges applied. So for, again, clarity, for all SARs work, for all insurance report work, for all patient online access work, for all multi-site login shared services work, there are no charges to the surgery for that. There are no charges to the CCG for that. And we operate currently in 145 of the 191 CCGs. We go through the DPIA and make those tasks much easier for the surgery to then go ahead and set up. But no, there are no charges to the surgery.
And as you mentioned about the DPIA, data security and all that kind of stuff has been fully approved and authenticated, and there's no concerns on that perspective, because I know that's something that sometimes people kind of go, oh, but what about the data security? And it seems that everything is sorted by the sounds of it.
Well, firstly, it would need to be an accredited partner of eMR. That's number one. Number two, we deal at CCG level and surgery level with DP officers, data protection officers, to ensure sign-off. We have an incredibly robust infrastructure that's a hybrid and is in UK data center, and we're also on the GPIT Futures framework, so we've had accreditation at that level as well.
Fair enough. And I guess obviously some practices will have patients that still have physical notes. At the end of the day, not everything is electronic, so that still requires those physical notes to be scanned in. I guess one important point for practice to note, obviously in the next year or so, all physical notes are meant to be digitised, and that is being done through the NHS England provision support mechanism. Still waiting for clarity on that, because I know that's out for tender. But obviously once that happens, that effectively will streamline this process so much more, because then it will completely be able to be done remotely. I'm right in thinking that, aren't I?
Yes, you absolutely are right. And currently the way our customers should work is to take any hard copies, scan and index, and then those will be pulled through and auto redactions will be applied, and then they can apply some manual redactions to that, as we showed earlier.
And for that process, they don't need a specific scan or anything, as it's just a normal scanning module.
That's correct. Yes.
Awesome. Cool. And I guess one of the features that you mentioned is this opportunity of inviting other people to help with this kind of mechanism. And I guess particularly with the new units that is primary care networks, I can definitely see certain areas thinking that actually this is one way that we can work at scale, that we can streamline back office services and stuff, and actually take a lot of pressure off practices in terms of delivering work that they have to do, and potentially look at doing this even on a network locality. Would you agree with that?
I would very much agree with that, and I would also like to just allow your listeners and viewers to appreciate that at the moment we have an understanding of what the volume of instructions from the private sector and public sector for these insurance and redacted reports is. There is no question that as efficiencies are brought in through the use of technology like eMR, those volumes will increase, which means that there is even more of a desire to see how surgeries can work together to process these instructions, which I think will only grow moving forward into the future.
Mm-hmm. And I guess one last thing, obviously we are, at the time of recording this, we're in the coronavirus outbreak. We're at the start of it. This is week 2 effectively, I think, if it is best, if you want to call it, and we are obviously waiting to see how the future progresses. Clearly a lot of companies have tried to support primary care as best as they can with the massive changes that are happening. I believe you mentioned it earlier, but there was an additional service that you're currently looking at providing for practices to try and help take some of the strain off them. Could you just summarize that one again for us, if that's okay?
Yes, for an eMR user, in the surgery management section, as we're seeing on the screen, below there is an option to actually invite another surgery into, as I explained previously, to process work on their behalf. What we're offering our users, our customers, is the fact that Medidata virtual GP surgery is available to invite to, with our panel of virtual GPs, they can invite us in to process all of their SARs and insurance reports while they currently move their allocation of resource to obviously the COVID-19 and the pressures that the surgery are currently experiencing. So just to be clear, it allows us to come in, look at their pipeline. We need to have a copy of the initial instruction, which we work out with the surgery. And from that point on, we will go ahead and process, redact, and send back immediately and give access to third parties that are waiting for these medical reports to be completed. So that is something that we feel we've already had a tremendous response, but clearly surgeries don't have the time at the moment to do these tasks, and by inviting us in virtually, we can undertake those tasks on their behalf.
And just to clarify, at this present moment in time, that's still EMIS practices. So thank you, gentlemen, for showing us that software. I know I'm really impressed with it. I do see real potential for practices to be able to save a lot of time, a lot of workload, and as a result of that, money as well. Money's not always everything, but it's something, definitely. And I think the key thing is it's the reduction in stress that practice will have to deal with. If they did want to contact you, where do they have to go?
Yeah, they can go to our website, as you can see the URL here, which is medi2data.com, or drop us an email at emr@medi2data.com, or go to the contact page of the website and give us a phone call. We'll be very happy. There is also a chat box down here on the right-hand side, and that chat box, by the way, is in eMR as a user as well. Just click on it, and we have very fast turnarounds in responding to anyone's queries or comments.
Awesome. So again, eGPlearners, I hope you found this demonstration effective and useful. I'm a really big fan of it. I am anxiously waiting for June so that hopefully our practice can have access when TPP and the other systems come on board, because I think it's going to make a massive time saving for us at the practice and just free up workload that we potentially obviously want to be directing elsewhere at this current moment in time, rather than having to deal with effectively it's bureaucracy to a degree. As always, if you've got any comments or questions, I'm more than happy to try and answer them myself or direct them back to Richard and Nick if that's better appropriately done so. But in terms of doing that, you can obviously contact me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, whichever platform you prefer. If you are listening on the podcast, apologies, slightly visual episode, feel free to check it out on the YouTube links, but hopefully you found this useful still. And as always, leave us a review on iTunes. And if you are watching on YouTube, please make sure you ring the bell to become a subscriber to get notified of all of our episodes, and definitely leave a comment. I guarantee you a reply. And as always, eGPlearning is here to help save you and your patients time by tech enhancing your primary care and learning. Catch you in the next episode.